When I was younger, I remember having a conversation with my friend's mom about pot. I was trying to convince her that it wasn't really a big deal and that the Bible doesn't really say not to do it. In fact, it doesn't say anything about it at all. And when we were having this conversation, it was at a time when weed was not legal anywhere in the country yet. And so her response to me was to quote Romans 13:2, saying, "Those who do not obey the law of the land are not obeying God." And so her reasoning was, because it was illegal, it was wrong. And that was well and good 25 years ago, but the laws have since changed. Marijuana is legal in almost half the states in America, and it's decriminalized in a handful of others. So where does that leave us? Is marijuana a sin? How should Christians view it now that it's becoming legal? And what does the Bible have to say? Let's take a look.
Attention, bargain shoppers.
Here we go. Recreational marijuana use. How should this be viewed from a biblical standpoint? Well, one way people interpret it, which seems to be incredibly common, is to compare it to alcohol in the Bible. There aren't any weed-specific verses, but the Bible does talk about alcohol. So that should be easy enough, right? Just as we're reading the verses about alcohol, we'll just replace the word with weed in our minds. Problem solved, go about our day. But is this fair? Or more importantly, is it accurate? And the answer is yes, but also no. It depends on how it's being framed. For example, let's say you're approaching marijuana as something that you don't need to do, but you're doing it because it makes you feel good. An indulgence. If this is the case, you could look at it the same as alcohol, the same as coffee, the same as cheesecake. Proverbs 23:20-21 tells us, "Do not join those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat, for drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags." So in some ways, you can group these things together. Wine, pot, meat, pizza. It's possible to overindulge on pretty much anything, and that can lead to unhealthy behavior. So in some ways, weed is like alcohol, but in other ways, it's nothing like alcohol. Very different chemical makeups, different uses, different effects. So we need to be careful when applying Bible verses to things that they aren't intended for. But we can glean a little insight into the heart of God as we read these verses. For example, the Bible speaks about being sober-minded. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." Here we're warned that disaster can strike at any moment, and it's important that we be mentally able to deal with that. Similarly, we can look at 1 Thessalonians 5:6-8, which tells us, "So then let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober, putting on faith and love as breastplates, and the hope of salvation as a helmet." This speaks to our character as Christians, clothing ourselves in love and faith, not sleeping idly in drunkenness. But there isn't just a cut and dry instruction like that. The answer is abstinence, and then that's the end of the story. If we look at 1 Timothy 5:23, we see Paul instruct Timothy, "Stop drinking only water and use a little wine because of your stomach and your frequent illnesses." So here Paul is addressing alcohol in the context of treating an ailment. Paul would seem to suggest that it's not only permissible, but he's advising it. He's instructing Timothy to stop drinking only water and take care of himself and do what it takes to get healed. Similarly, marijuana is used for a wide variety of medicinal uses, everything from pain relief to cancer treatment. I've also seen verses used like Genesis 1:29. "Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food." Now one might look at this verse and say, well, that's talking specifically about food. God never intended for us to use those plants to make ourselves feel good. But my response to that would be in Psalm 104. "He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for people to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth, wine that gladdens human hearts, oil to make their faces shine, and bread that sustains their hearts." So God understands that we can't simply exist. We need things in order to function, in order to sustain us, but we also need to do things for enjoyment as well. This verse specifically says that the earth brings forth wine to gladden human hearts, wine made from grapes, grapes, oil to make our faces shine, which is just adorning our outward appearance, carbs to sustain our hearts. There's no real need for these things, but God provides them all the same for our enjoyment. So we can conclude a couple of things here. First, the Bible does make a clear distinction between doing something for enjoyment and indulging in something to the point where it affects your character and your ambition. This was the whole point of Proverbs 23:21, which says that drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags. There's also wisdom in 1 Corinthians 10:23, where Paul tells us that everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. You can justify just about anything, but not everything is going to benefit you. So I'm going to end this video with a word of warning. Whenever you're deciding is something right or wrong and you're trying to judge that action, it is very easy to fall into the trap of judging other people instead. So I want you to remember Colossians 2:16 through 23, which reads, "Therefore do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility disqualify you. Such regulations indeed have an appearance of wisdom, with their self-imposed worship, their false humility, and their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgence." So there you have it. There's a lot of different opinions out there. I'd love to hear from you. Leave your comment below if you'd like. Also, if you found this video interesting, please feel free to like and subscribe. It does help out the channel. I'll leave the verses used today in the description. My name is Adam. This is Bargain Bin Theology, and remember, you get what you pay for.